Fellas, lady fellas, Evan Real Society, welcome to the Fantasy and Reality Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today in the ridiculously over-decorated studio, we're going to be talking about Week 2 starts and sits for the wide receiver and tight end positions. So we're going to start out with the New England Patriots and Miami Dolphins. With all the stuff going around with Antonio Brown, all the commotion and this and that about the allegations of sexual assault, we don't know what's going on. You know just as much as I do. So we just have to play that by ear. We're not sure if he's going to play yet. So we have to wait around and see what Belichick and company is going to do, if they're going to play him or not. So just be cautious with that. As of now, I think he's playing, so he'll be in the starting lineup. But as I said, pay attention to news coming out about him, so that way you know whether or not to start him, if he's going to be active or not. As far as Josh Gordon and Edelman go, I'll start both of them. They should have a good game. Brady killed it last week, and the Dolphins are completely destroyed. We don't know what's going on in Miami, so everyone's trying to leave as fast as they can. So everyone you can start in any game against Miami this season, you probably should. And on the other side, I'll probably sit all the receivers for Miami. Just like I said before, they're freaking out in Miami, so anyone this season that's going against Miami, start them. Anyone that you have from Miami, sit them the entire season. As far as the tight ends go, Ben Watson's not back yet for the Patriots, so Lacoste, Gesicki, and Izzo, you could bench all of those guys. The only guys that I like in this game at the wide receiver and tight end position are Julian Edelman and Josh Gordon. The next game we have the Arizona Cardinals visiting the Baltimore Ravens. I think that Hollywood Marquise Brown is going to be a start for me. He did well, so hopefully he can continue that. I would also start Christian Kirk and Larry Fitz, because Larry Fitzgerald had a fantastic game. He's going to do what he does. Larry Legend is so consistent, man. He's one of the last few guys in the league that is such a class act, stand-up guy that's so consistent and quiet about everything he does and says. Anything he has an opinion on, he does it on the field. You know, he's not one of those talker guys. Very respectable guy. We're going to miss him whenever he retires. Hopefully it won't be this season. That way he can impart his knowledge onto his teammates for a little bit longer, such as Kyler Murray. You know, give him that guidance to be the leader that he could be on that team. Christian Kirk could be benefiting this week. Baltimore's defense is very tough, but if Kyler Murray can spread the ball around, do what he does, you know, get a few rushing yards, get everyone to stack the box against him, maybe he can throw a few deep ones to Kirk. As for our receiver sits, I would sit Willie Snead, Michael Crabtree. In Crabtree's case, you could start him if you want, but I would advise against it, but it's up to you. He could be one of those guys that has a high potential. Willie Snead, I just don't think that he's going to see enough production. As for the tight ends, I would start my boy Mark Andrews. I think he's going to do well again. I'm not sure if he's going to get 2 touchdowns like he did last game. Just kind of curb your enthusiasm about that. But he still should be a start for this week. And I would just bench all the Arizona tight ends. Next we have the Los Angeles Chargers going to meet the Detroit Lions. I would start Keenan Allen. He has 2 injured teammates possibly in the receiving game, so he should see an increased amount of targets than he already does have. So hopefully that shoots him up even higher to get just an outrageously productive game. I would also start Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, with caution for Marvin Jones. And when I say with caution for any of these guys, I mean that you could start him, but if you don't, I don't blame you. So, like I said, Jones is a start with caution. He could be a bench, but if you need him in deeper leagues, you know, he might be a decent flex play for you. As far as Golladay goes, hopefully he can get that #1 spot back and be productive, but it'll be interesting to see throughout the entire season what Jones and Kenny G do to see who's going to be that #1 guy in Detroit. As far as the sits for the wide receivers in this game, I'll probably have to sit Mike Williams because he has like a mysterious injury that came up from last week's game. So I'm hoping that he can come back because he's one of my reliable guys that I like for this entire season. Hopefully he can bounce back. I'm not sure if he will this week, but going forward after this week, hopefully he'll be a guy that I can start every game. But as of this week, I'd probably have to, unfortunately, sit him. As far as the tight ends go, I would start T.J. Hockenson. I like that guy. He's another one of my guys. And everyone was saying about how the Lions didn't use the tight end a lot, this and that, with Ebron, and Hawkinson's a rookie, but I always had faith in him. I'm not sure if he's going to see the production that he did last week every game, but I still think it's going to be a decent amount. He's going to see quite a few targets, hopefully almost around the double-digit targets. And let's say he catches 8 receptions for 50 yards. A decent, well-rounded game, especially in PPR. So he could be a guy that I like for most of the season to start. And unfortunately, in last week's game, Hunter Henry suffered a tibia plateau fracture, so he'll be out for a few weeks. So he's obviously going to be a sit. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings going to see the Green Bay Packers. I would start Thielen. I would start Adams. Those are automatic for me. Diggs is a start with caution because hopefully this guy is going to be 100% this time, rather than basically just being a guy, a name on the offense for the defense to look at. Hopefully actually sees production this game. As far as sits, I would sit MVS and Allison because we still don't know who's going to be that number 2 for sure guy behind Adams. So until that gets cleared up, I'm kind of going to stay away from those 2 guys. I'm also going to bench Laquan Treadwell because I don't think he's going to do anything, especially with the first 2 being so dominant. As far as tight ends go, I would probably sit Kyle Rudolph. I don't think he's going to see very much production. And then as for Jimmy Graham, he might be another one that is very touchdown dependent, just like last week. I figured he would get very little, as I said in an earlier video, of 3 catches, a few yards, and then a touchdown. So that's what he had last week. It was 3 for 30 and a touchdown on the Thursday night. So if he can continue to get those touchdowns, he'll be a start for me. But he's on the side of caution with the touchdowns being so volatile to his production. So you might want to watch out for that. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans. I would start D-Hop, no problem. I would start Westbrook. I think he's going to have a better game than he did last week. He still had a decent game, but Chark and Conley each had better games than him. And that's why I would both start them with the side of caution because they have the new quarterback coming in with Gardner Minshew. So we'll see how his chemistry can cooperate with them on the field, see who he throws to the most. So I would start all 3 of those guys if you had to. I'd be okay with that. I would also start Will Fuller with caution because he saw a decent amount of production in the game against New Orleans. So if QT's out and Kenny Stills is not going to see very much production except for that one potentially game-winning touchdown at the time, then I don't see him seeing much, so Will Fuller can jump up to that number 2 spot, so I would start him with caution. As I said, Kenny Stills, not a guy that I see a lot of production out of so far, so for this week he would be a sit for me, and I would just sit all the tight ends in that entire game. Next, we have the 49ers going to the Bengals. I would start Tyler Boyd. I would start John Ross with caution. Last week he had a very good game, so hopefully he can continue that reformation of himself because he wanted to reinvent himself type thing. So hopefully that continues into a more productive player is hopefully what he's becoming to be. I would also, with caution, start Deebo Samuel because I like the guy. I'm not sure how good Marquise Goodwin and Dante Pettis will be, so I'll sit both of them because Pettis has just done a 180. He had such hype coming into the season, and then right before the season started, he just started to drop, and now his production is just suffering. So until he starts to pick it up, I don't see him being a guy that I'll start anytime soon. As for the tight ends, both of these are no-brainers. Start Kittle, no problem. Eifert and CJ Uzomah, I would sit both of them. I'm not sure how Andy Dalton's going to incorporate both of them to make either one of them relevant, so they're both a sit for me. The next game, we have the Buffalo Bills meeting the New York Giants. Having to travel so far. I would start John Brown. I think he's going to be that number 1 guy for Josh Allen. Josh Allen had a decently good game, so hopefully John Brown can continue that. Cole Beasley, I would start with caution because he could be the number 2 guy that you can see. I would sit Zay Jones and Foster, guys like that I'm not sure how they're going to perform, especially not being the number 1 or possibly number 2 guys anymore. And then I would sit Sterling Shepard, Lattimore, everyone that's not going to see production in this game, because for starters, I'm going to start Evan Ingram. I like that guy so much, especially for the first 4 games since Golden Taint is out with that suspension. So hopefully he can continue his production to get even higher, to make him that number 1 target on the entire offense besides Saquon. And I would bench any of Buffalo's tight ends. Next game, we have the Seattle Seahawks going to see the Pittsburgh Steelers. Juju Smith-Schuster. We're not sure if he's healthy. Just keep monitoring him to see if he's going to play, if he's not going to play. So play that by ear. As of now, it's still a question mark. He might be a game time decision as of now as I'm recording this. So I'm not sure what he's going to do, but just be prepared if you need to bench him. As far as Lockett and Metcalf go, I'll start both of them. Lockett should definitely be that number 1, seeing a lot of production. Metcalf says he's 100% healthy from that surgery he had not too long ago, so he looked decent last week. Hopefully he can become a better football player. He will be one of those that I proceed with caution. So if you sit him, I don't blame you. As for the sits, I would bench Washington and Moncrief from the Steelers. Moncrief looked terrible last week. He received 10 targets and caught 3 balls for 7 yards. I was having such high hopes for this guy being the possible number 2 across from Juju, but he and Washington have just been letdowns so far. It's only week 1, so we don't have to freak out yet, but that was a very poor performance, so he might not get another opportunity in Moncrief in that offense to be the number 2, so we're just going to have to see how that plays out. As for tight ends, I would start Vance Dance. Hopefully, Vance McDonald will see more production with the number 2 and 3 receiver doing so poorly and Juju possibly not being in the game. So if Juju's not playing and the 2 and 3 are doing so wishy-washy poorly, then Vance should have a monster game. And then Will Disley, I would bench him. Next we have the Indianapolis Colts going to see the Tennessee Titans. T.Y. Hilton is a start for me, especially where you drafted him at to be a potential flex on your team. Should be good production for that spot. I would start Paris Campbell with caution because Devin Funchess is out for the year. So hopefully that could mean that he's going to be the set number 2 across from T.Y. and get a lot of production. Kane also might see a decent amount of production since Funchess is out. I would start A.J. Brown with caution. He had a 100-yard game, his first game in the NFL. So hopefully he'll keep that up because I do not believe in Corey Davis. I'll bench that dude. Adam Humphries, it's a little too early to see what's going to go on with him. So he's probably going to be a sit for me this week. But hopefully he can actually produce and be that guy because he was decently good with the Bucks. So hopefully he can continue that going with the Titans. As far as the tight ends go, I'd start old man Delaney Walker, proving that age is only a number and stats are also numbers, and that's what he's getting a lot of. So 2 touchdowns last week, being a man. So he's proven that he's still got it, and I still believe in him, so he'll be a start for me. But on the other side, with all the Colts, with Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, and Wiley Cox, I'll probably bench all those guys just because there's 3 of them, so not so much Wiley Cox. But for Doyle and Ebron, it'll kind of be, a split of this and that. So I don't like questionable who's going to be the more productive guy, so I'll just be positive in benching them both. Next we have the Dallas Cowboys against the Washington Redskins. Amari Cooper will be a start for me, even though he's so inconsistent and volatile. I think he should have a boom game. It could be bust. So that's the risk that you take with starting Amari Cooper, but he should be a start for this game. I also like Michael Gallup. He's the more consistent guy. So if Cooper has an up or down game, then Gallup should be right there in the middle having a decent game. Now with the Redskins, Quinn and McLaren had a fantastic game last week, so he's, I'm sure, one of the top guys that were being picked up on waivers for this week. So you can start both of them, McLaurin and Quinn, with caution just to see how Case Keenum's going to do, because even though he might do well, I think that they're going to pull the plug on him and start Haskins just because he's our guy that we've picked early and we need to start him just to show something. So hopefully they keep faith in Keenum and he can keep throwing the ball, being productive for that offense, because recently found out that Darius Geis tore his meniscus, so he'll be out, which is very unfortunate. So AP should be a start, even though this is not about running backs. There's just an update. AP maybe a start. Chris Thompson definitely a start in PPR flex. As for benches, I would bench Randall Cobb and Harmon and Richardson. I don't think Paul Richardson's going to see that much production, just like Randall Cobb, and Harmon's the same way. So I just don't see the guys doing very much, so there'd be an obvious sit. As far as the tight ends, if Jordan Reed's still out, then obviously he's a bench, and Vernon Davis, being a super athletic older guy, I'm going to keep faith in him and put him as a start. But another older guy, Jason Witten, I'll probably bench him. Next we have the Chiefs visiting Oakland to go see the Raiders. Since Tyreek is going to be out for possibly 2 months, Sammy Watkins is a must start. Mecole Hardman could also be a start with caution. He could be that number 2 guy. Well, number 3 if you count Kelsey. So he could see production, but we still have to be cautious about it. I would start Tyrell Williams because he's going to be the number 1 on the Oakland Raiders offense. So hopefully Derek Carr can throw to him like he did last week. The first touchdown of their season went to Tyrell because of the whole AB thing. They tried to prove that they don't need AB, which is a crazy thing to say, but they proved that they didn't need him to beat the Broncos. So hopefully they can continue that persona of we don't need AB, we can do what we can to win games. I'll probably bench Hunter Renfrow. I'm not sure who Derek Carr is going to lean on besides Tyrell, so I would rather not have to start Renfrow. As far as tight ends go, obvious starts, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. The Walrus is going to produce just like Kelsey's. Kelsey's going to be a monster like he usually is, no problem. Done talking about that. Next game up, we have the Chicago Bears traveling west to go meet the Denver Broncos. Allen Robinson would be a start for me. I think he's still going to be that number 1 in Chicago for Trubisky. So he would be a start for me. And as far as the Denver receivers, I would probably only start one of them. Either Sutton Sanders or Hamilton. One of those guys, not 2, not all of them. Depending on which one that could be, I'm not sure. I would probably lean towards Emmanuel Sanders just because he looked really good. So if I had to, I would choose them. But if I had the choice, I would bench all of them. But I understand there's 3 of them, so it's likely that someone has one of them. So I would probably lean towards Sanders if I had to pick one. I would bench Anthony Miller. I'm not sure if he's going to be healthy. I have a lot of faith in him. I like him for this season, but he might not be too productive early on in the season, especially if he's not 100%. And hopefully Noah Fant, that beast of a dude, can see a lot of production and be a starter for this week. I have him as a start. I'm hoping he could do well. You never know with Flacco. That dude is just ridiculous. He's such a great athlete. So hopefully, like I said, Flacco can actually look at him, target him, because he's an animal. And on the other side, I'll bench Trey Burton. Still don't really know how healthy he is because last week he was out. And so I kind of don't want to have anything to do with him right now until I know for sure that he's healthy and that Trubisky can actually throw the ball like normal instead of doing what he did last week. And again, he didn't play in preseason, so he was a bit rusty. So hopefully that will not be a continuation from last week. He can actually be a regular quarterback, target receivers, do well instead of that poor performance we saw last week. So until he does that, I'll bench Burton because of the health and Trubisky being so inconsistent. Next, we have the revenge game. The New Orleans Saints traveling to Los Angeles to go try to get revenge on the Rams. Michael Thomas, obvious start for the Rams. I could see myself starting all three in Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. I think that they're all going to see production, so they would all be starts for me, especially if Marshawn Lattimore is covering one guy, then the other two are going to see production because Goff could pick on the secondary like Deshaun Watson did. So I could see any of the three or even all three having decent fantasy games. As far as sits, I would sit Ted Ginn and Traquan Smith because they're just too volatile and inconsistent because Drew kind of doesn't target them as much. He spreads the ball a little bit between Kamara and Thomas and Jared Cook. So we'll see how that's going to go. He could pass it to Latavius. So he has a few more options. So that's why Ginn and Traquan will be sits for me. And speaking of tight ends, as I said, Cook, he'll be a start for me because I think Drew will target him a bit more. He had a nice catch in the first game, so we know he's athletic. Hopefully Drew can target him. That way he'll be a fantasy relevant tight end for us. On the other side, I wouldn't start Higbee or Everett. Goff's not really a tight end targeting guy, especially with the three he has. He kind of doesn't need to be, so you can't really have a relevant fantasy tight end on that team. Sunday Night Football, we have the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to Atlanta to go see the Falcons. Julio's a must start. Calvin Ridley is a start with caution because he's another one of those inconsistent guys. He hasn't quite proven that he can be consistent week in and week out. So I could start him. He could see a nice game, but I wouldn't blame you if you sat him. Djax is probably going to be a start for me. I like the way Deshaun Jackson played last week. He showed that he still got it. His first game back in Philadelphia was fantastic. So he'll be a start for me, probably a flex. But I wouldn't blame you. Just like Calvin Ridley, a nice flex play. But if you don't have to play him, then I wouldn't because they're both high upside but very risky guys. And I don't like it, but you could start Alshon. I think he's going to see production. He should be that number one receiver on the team. So you could start him if you want. I wouldn't because I'm not a fan of Alshon. I think he's going to fall off this season. So I would be cautious, but if you're all in on him, you can start him, no problem. As far as the bench guys would go, I would sit Mohamed Sanu, Nelson Aguilar, Jaws, and Hardy. I don't think that they're going to see very much production. I like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but I don't think he can breathe in this offense because Wentz has so many people that he can target. I'm going to start Zach Ertz. I'm going to bench Dallas Goedert because I still think that they have a ways to go before Goddard can be a start. Unless you're in a deeper league, you need a tight end or a flex spot. And I would also start Austin Hooper. He had a very good game last week. He saw a lot of targets. So a lot of receptions in PPR can only mean good things for you. And lastly, we'll round it off with the Monday night game. The Cleveland Browns against the New York Jets. OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder will all be starts for me. Quincy Enunwa is out for the season with a neck injury, so that could mean a lot more targets going toward Crowder and possibly Anderson's way. So hopefully they'll perform well just like the Browns. Hopefully they can perform better. But their performance as receivers can only be so good if Baker doesn't perform well. If he performs well, then OBJ and Jarvis should have awesome games. I would bench Higgins. I'm not sure how many targets he's going to see. He saw a few at the early stages of the game last week, but as the game went on, he kind of faded away. And then the Jets just signed Demaryius Thomas, but I don't think he'll be a factor. So he's obviously a bench for me. Tight ends, I want to start Njoku. I still have faith in him. Even though he hasn't quite proven anything, he's pretty inconsistent. But being on that offense, having that quarterback there with the other weapons to take attention away from him. He could hopefully see a very productive game in New York. And then I would sit any of the Jets tight ends. I don't really believe in them because Sam Darnold is apparently going to miss time, as we recently found out. So the backup is going to have to come in, be that guy. We'll see who he relies on, whether it's Robbie Anderson or Jamison Crowder. So one of them should have a fantastic game, especially if you lean on someone being your first game in. You can have that awesome receiver that you can rely on to dump it to, pass to every time. Also, Le'Veon Bell could see more targets. If he's feeling pressured, just dump it off to the running back, just like CMC did, because Cam was kind of injured. So we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully that means good things for the Browns. They could possibly get leads and run Chubb a bit more, but we'll see how that goes on Monday night. Those were my starts and sits for the rest of the week at the wide receiver and tight end positions. Hopefully this is helping you on deciding on if you should start someone or sit someone. If you had both guys that you were choosing between starts or both sits in the list that I just said, then let me know. I can give you some assistance on who you should start over this person, if they're both starts or if they're both sits. So let me know down in the comment section if you have any questions about that. But as always, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your support. Leave your questions, topic suggestions, comments down there in the comment section below. I'll try to answer any and all questions that you have, especially related to the start sits. How can I help your lineup in any way? Remember that sports is supposed to be enjoyed together. So please tell someone about us, watch together. We want to try to grow the community as much as possible, get as much exposure as we can. In order to do that, you got to smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, so we can keep trying to give you as much information, as content as possible to help you with your starting lineup, who to sit, who to bench. But lastly, we'll leave you with God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.